Well, hello guys. Today we're going to do a quick install of Arch from scratch, and we're also going to be installing a desktop environment. I'm going to be installing XFCE, but you can install GNOME, Cinnamon, they're all available and they all run fine on top of Arch. We in specific are going to do a UEFI install. The reason for that is most people nowadays are using UEFI instead of BIOS and master boot record. But you can do that as well, of course, but I'll be doing UEFI. So I'm not going to do every single step that they show inside this installation guide. As you can see, this is the normal installation guide from archlinux.org. What you must do before you start anything is come here to the right to download and find a mirror that's closest to you and actually download the ISO file. So we just pick one at random here, let's say this one. And so the one that you actually want to install is this ISO file here. It's 695 meg in size, nice and small. It's not very big to install Arch at all. And all right, so let's get going. If we come over to our virtual machine, or VirtualBox here, and if we look at settings, I've set it up already. I think it's about 2.5 gig RAM, 30 gig hard drive, way more than what Arch needs, but I had it, so use it. The very important thing is under system here is to enable UEFI, and that is going to let us do a UEFI install. And if you don't enable that, you'll be doing a normal BIOS and master boot record install. So we enable that. And the other thing I did was on the network, I changed from NAT to a bridge adapter so that I can connect to the internet using my local network. And we start that up. Let's minimize VirtualBox there. We choose our downloaded ISO and start that up. Okay, so while that's going to load Arch for us, let's just go back here to our installation guide. So it basically tells us up front here, prepare your installation medium, download your ISO in other words, and either stick it on a USB, or if you're in a VirtualBox, you can directly access it as if it's a CD-ROM drive. And we can test our internet link and see if we do a ping, and then basically move on from there and do the actual installation. So if we get back here, okay, so Arch is booted up and we're in it. And so the first thing we can do is let's see if we've got an IP address. So yes, I do have an IP address, 192.168.0.112. So it spoke to my DHCP router and got an IP address. And so let us see if we can ping anything on the internet here. We shouldn't have a problem. And yes, we can ping arch.org, no problem. What we can do is to do this time date CTL. And let me bring Arch and put it on top here. Okay. Now, something I've noticed of recent in VirtualBox, when you're doing your time date CTL, at this point it seems like it's hanging. You're not back at the command prompt. It's just press enter, you're back. I don't know why it's doing that. It didn't do it in the past. All right, then once we've done that, we need to do our fdisk and actually set up our partitions. Now, we're not sure which drives or which devices Arch has detected for us. So we do a BLK here, ls block, and we can see it's got SDA. If you're doing a bare metal install, you might be on SDB or C, but just make note of this, it's very important. You don't want to use the wrong device. You might overwrite other partitions if you're on a live system. All right, so fdisk, and we want to use, oh come on, dev SDA, oh come on. Okay, so if we do M to get our help, you'll notice at the bottom it says create a new label, and the first option is G to create a new empty GPT partition table. That's what we're going to be doing. The reason for that is we're doing UEFI. If you're doing things the old way, BIOS with a master boot record, then you can select O for a DOS partition table. So we say G, and it's now gone and created our disk label for us. Now we need to create our first partition. Now, why I say first partition is when we're doing an EFI install, you need the partition in which we're going to put the EFI specific stuff, and then our different partition to actually install Arch into. You can create another partition if you obviously want your swap drive, and I'm not going to be doing swap today though. Alright, so we say new, and our first partition, yes, accept the default. We'll start at 2048. And okay, so this is an important step, is the size of the partition. So I'm going to do 1024K here. 1024K sectors. So that is going to be approximately 500 meg, which is what we need for EFI. I think you actually only need something like 280 meg or something, but I'm going to do 512. So 1024K, and we say OK. So he's created our partition for us. And the issue though here is the type is of Linux file system. We don't want a Linux file system, we want an EFI system. So we T to change the type, and we select so we want our EFI system, which is type number 1, but we'll just go and say L and see what we've got available, and there it is, our very first one on top, number 1 EFI system. So we Q out of that, number 1 for EFI system. And if I now say P to print out what we currently have, there we have our EFI system. So now we want to create another partition, and this will be partition 2, and we're just going to accept the defaults because we want to use the rest of our disk to install Arch and all our other stuff on. Alright, so if we do a P again, you'll see we've got 2 partitions, EFI system and Linux file system. So we say W to write that, and it's now written that. The next step is to actually format those partitions with a file system. Now, very important, for our very first partition, which we're going to be installing our EFI stuff, it has to be a FAT file system. And so we select dev SDA1. So we're formatting our first partition with a FAT file system. Now we want to format our second partition, and this is the main one we're going to be installing Arch on, and we're going to make that ext4. You can do btrfs, etc. I'm just using ext4 because most people use ext4, so people can relate easier. And we enter on that, and it's gone ahead and done that for us. So if we come back to our installation guide, okay, so we did the fdisk, we are doing the UEFI with GPT, and we've done our formatting. Yeah, you can do your swap. Alright, so now we need to mount our actual partition that we're going to be installing Arch on. SDA2, and we stick it into the mount directory, and then we can get to our actual installation step, which is that there. And okay, so packstrap. Alright, so let that run. That's going to take a few minutes. It's probably somewhere between, depending on your speeds, somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes, maybe quicker. So I'll let that run, and when it's finished, I'll be back. And there we have it. The installation is completed. It took a little over 6 minutes for me. And the next thing we need to do is to generate our fstab file. And well, let me go back to the installation guide and show you here. Okay, so we've done the installation itself, and it tells us once we log in, we might have issues like networking, text editor, and so forth. So, alright, let's generate the fstab file. You can do UID or labels, label being /dev/sda2, and or was it 1? I can't remember now. But I'm just going to be using UID. Okay, so it's gone and generated our fstab file for us. So if we do a cat, we should have entry in there. Yes, we do. UID there. And so that's all good. And the next thing is we now need to actually chroot into our system. Alright, we chrooted into it, and there's now a few things that we can do. One of the things is we can see if there's maybe new versions of our Arch Linux installation. So yes, there's 93 meg of updates available, so let's install that quick. Alright, so we've successfully upgraded to the latest version of our Arch installed stuff. So if we come back to our installation guide here, what we can do is set our hardware clock. After that, here we can now start with the localization. Now, we probably do not have VI installed, no, Nano, no, okay. So we're going to need to do some editing of config files. So I'm going to install Nano. Yeah, this is what's great of Linux. It's so quick to install stuff, and they're small installations typically. So Nano is installed that quick and easy. And alright, so we need to edit our locale, our gen file here. And for you guys in Britain, you can come here and select or uncomment the line EN GB. If you're in the US, you can uncomment here EN US. Now I'm in South Africa, so I'll be uncommenting the line next to the US here, ZA. Control S on that and exit. And now we need to do the actual generation. Now this next step, I don't really know why it must be done. Just do it because it says I must do it. I don't know why it isn't generated for you. But alright, so we set our language to EN. Now we get to our keymap here, vconsole.conf. If you don't type anything in there, the default will be US. And I'm okay with US. My keyboard is a US layout, so I'm not going to make that change. So we now need to change our host name and our host file. And alright, so that will be host name. And I'm going to call myself Viper. Control S, Control X, and then hosts. Okay, so this particular line, 127011, if you are actually running a live system where you do have a real IP address here, replace this 127011 with your IP address, and your domain, just replace it to what it should actually be. Control S, Control X again. Alright, so we've set all that up, and then it says, you know, if you did LVM and so forth, you can run this. We didn't do that, so we don't need to do that. Alright, very important is to change the root password. We're going to need it if we have to do a reboot. So let's just change our root password to something. Now, according to this installation guide here, it now says that you can do a reboot. Well, no, you can't do a reboot at this point. There are a few extra steps, and that is to get grub working and to set the system up so that it can boot using UEFI. So I've got a set of commands that I've saved here. We've done the update. We are rooted into our system, and now we need to install grub and the UEFI boot manager. It's important to do at this point because you've still got an internet connection. When we do well, you wouldn't be able to reboot anyway, but if you had to boot and you don't have an internet connection, it'll be difficult to get your system up and running possibly. So now while you've got an internet connection, install things you need, and also everything should be good. So, oops. Alright, so that happens. Then after that, we've got to create our UEFI boot directory. Okay, so that worked good. So now we do our, this is our UEFI boot directory, and then we need to mount that to SDA1. Remember, SDA1 is our UEFI partition. So we mounted, And now we need to do the grub install. Okay, so we're now installing grub. Once we've done the installation of grub, we need to create the configuration file with this bit here. Alright, so that's installed, and now we can make the config file. And the config file is made. So now, while we still got an internet connection, I want to install DHCP-CD so that when we reboot our system, we can actually get an IP address from my DHCP server, and we've got internet connection again. Else there's extra steps you've got to go through. So let's just do it now. And let's have a look what its status is. I can't do that at the moment because I am CH rooted into here. So what we need to do then is let's do a reboot. Okay, so we exit out of CH root and then we say reboot now. We should log into Arch. Yeah, there we go. We're logging into our Arch install. And there we are. So we can log in. So we should be able to log in with our root, with our new password that we set. And we're in. So I assume we don't have any internet at the moment. That's correct. We don't have an IP address. Systemctl. Let's just look at the status of DHCP-CD, which we installed just now. So it's inactive at the moment. So let's start it. And let's see if we've got an IP address. Nope. Still trying, I assume. Yes, there we go. Got an IP address. 112 again. So we've got internet connection again. So we can continue with our install. From this point forward, so this is Arch itself has been installed now. And first thing I suppose we can do is to create ourselves a new user. So we don't have to log in as root all the time. And to do that, user add, sorry. We want -m, so it creates us home folders. I'll create a user called Dean, myself. And then I want to add Dean, let's give Dean a password. Right, so Dean has got a password. And then we want to add Dean to the wheel group. Now on Arch, some of you might know the sudo group. Wheel is the same as a sudo group. So if we then user mod -ag, so A for keep our current groups that we already belong to, and then add the wheel group for the user Dean. We don't actually have any sudo installed on our Arch system. So if I say sudo, it doesn't know what we're talking about, so we need to install sudo. So pacman -s and sudo. Oops, me and my typing here. Okay, so we're going to install sudo. Alright, so sudo has been installed. So if I switch user into Dean, Dean should belong to the wheel group. So if I say groups, okay, Dean belongs to the wheel group, which is good. So let's exit out of that. Now, the next step is we need to edit our sudoers file to allow wheel to actually do sudo work. So we do nano, and it is in our etsy folder, and it's our sudoers file, sudoers. Now I'm doing a control W to do a search for wheel, and okay, so there's our wheel entry. So we uncomment that so that users that belong to the wheel group can actually execute sudo stuff. So now Dean should be able to do sudo stuff. Although I'm going to do a reboot, you might not always need to do a reboot when you add someone to your wheel group, but I find it works perfectly without any issues if I just do my reboot first. And then after that we'll log in as Dean. Alright, so don't log in as root, but let's log in as Dean. And Dean should now have sudo rights. I suppose the first thing that Dean wants to do is, well, let's just see if we can run something as sudo. Let's just run nano. And so yes, we can run a sudo and put in our password. And yeah, so we can run a sudo, so that's all good. Alright, so we've got Arch up and running, and we've got a user installed which has got a home directory. I wonder if there's anything in here. Yeah, there's our bash stuff. The next thing we need to do is, if I come and look at my notes here again, and so now we need to install Xorg and XFCE. Now we need to sudo, because we're not root anymore, so you have to say sudo pacman -s, and we want to install Xorg and XFCE4 and XFCE4 goodies. Select all of those things. It's telling us what it's going to install. That's what we want. There are 50 members in the group, and yes, we want all that. 37 members, yes. So we're happy with everything. Okay, here it says there's 2 providers available for libjack. Okay, we'll just accept the first one, just accept the default, and it's going to install all of that stuff and say enter, and it'll do. Oh, we got a problem. What is going on here now? I wonder, we do have access to the internet. Oh, okay, we don't have access to the internet. We're not up. Yeah, we are not up. Let's just clear this page. We've got a nice clean page to work from. So we did not acquire an IP address either. But since we're down, I wonder if this will work. I doubt it, because we are actually, we are up. Okay, yeah, so there we go, so we got it. Alright, so that didn't start automatically. Let's just make sure that it starts in future. So just enable it. Okay, so now it should start every time we reboot our system, and so we'll be able to connect to the network. So let's do our pacman again and install all these fancy goodies. And we accept all the defaults, and we do our install, and there we go. So now we're installing Xorg and also XFCE. All right, so Xorg and XFCE is installed. Now we need to install a login manager. So we're going to be using lightdm and lightdm-gtk-greeter. All right, so we install that. Yes. Okay, so lightdm has been installed. So now we have to make sure that it'll start up. Okay, enable system. Okay, we enable lightdm, and I'm not going to start it now. I actually want to shut down this virtual machine. So let's just say shutdown. Right, and the reason why I'm doing the shutdown is because in VirtualBox itself I forgot to set something. So what I normally do with a GUI, especially when I go full screen, or well, it's for full screen, is if you come here to user interface, then show this mini toolbar. I don't want to show the mini toolbar because it just irritates me when I'm running full screen stuff in VirtualBox. Okay, so we save that and let's start up again. Alright, and since after we installed lightdm, I enabled it with systemctl, so we boot directly into it, and we now have a graphical environment, and I can log in with my normal password, and get in and change resolution and things like that. So let's just make this full screen. Alright, so it's small at the moment, and so if we go to Alt F3 and then say display, we can change our resolution here. So I'm going to change it to my native resolution and apply that, and yes, we're happy. Okay. And there we have XFCE up and running. I immediately do a few changes typically, and that is to get rid of this second panel down at the bottom here. I don't like that, and we get rid of that, and then select the first panel, and we can change its size a little bit. Let's make it 20, and that's all good. And the appearance, where was my auto hide? Here we go, automatically hide, so I'm going to always hide it. And alright, so we can close on that. Another thing we could do is just change the desktop background. We just select something, I don't know, which one do we want? A nice colorful one. Alright, so we've changed the desktop background. Now we can install Firefox. Control Alt and T to open up our terminal. So we want to install Firefox. So we've got a browser, because by default one isn't installed with XFCE. And what are this? There are 8 providers for the TTF font. Yes, we want the GNU free fonts. So we'll accept that and say yes on that. So we're installing Firefox. Now, another thing we can quickly do, again, Alt F3 to get our menu, is to look at our settings. So we go to our settings manager, and our appearance we change. I want Dweeter dark, and icons. Okay, fonts. Oh, we must come and change the fonts. Fonts are terrible, the default fonts. I like the Ubuntu fonts, so I'm going to install Ubuntu fonts on here. And okay, so go back to all settings. Window manager tweaks, cycle through windows in a list I prefer, cycle through minimize windows. Okay, yes, focus, no worry, compositor, that's fine. Placement, alright, this placement, I always want my things stuck in the center. Workspace, okay, so let's go back to all settings. What else do we want to set right now? I think there's nothing we really need. Oh, well, we can do the keyboard shortcuts. And alright, so let's close that. And again, Alt F3, and you go to keyboard. Just make this menu a little bit bigger. Double click on keyboard there, go to application shortcuts. Okay, this Thunar I don't want. And this Thunar this shortcut I want to change to, I like meta and enter. Or super and enter. Then my browser, this one I'm going to, well, doesn't matter which one, but I'm going to get rid of this one, and this one I want to change to be come on, edit. Okay, I want that to be Control-Shift-F, just what I'm used to using when I open a browser. Okay, did that do it now? Okay, I think so. And alright, so let's see, our installation should be complete. Yes, we are complete. So what was the Ubuntu fonts again? It was Pacman TTF dash Ubuntu. I can't remember. Let's just do a search. So it's S and then small s. Ubuntu font family, that's what I want. Ubuntu font family. Install the Ubuntu fonts. Alright, so that is done. And if we again come to our settings, on our appearance, I want to change the font. So sans regular, I want to change to Ubuntu. Ubuntu mono regular, I think that's the one I want. Or is there not just a regular? Yeah, Ubuntu regular, that's the one I want. Okay, and our fonts already look much better. Now, like I said, I created a shortcut to open my browser, which was Ctrl-Shift-F. So Firefox should pop up. Yep, a little bit slow. I am in a virtual machine though, so please excuse me. And let's just do some basic settings in Firefox quickly. Go to Preferences, and restore previous session. Down at the bottom here, we can change by network settings, enable DNS over HTTPS. Let me just see if there's anything else on here. No, that's all fine. Home is fine. Search, okay. I know it's going to be Google as a default. I don't want Google. I want DuckDuckGo. And then privacy and security, I always select strict. And you can then select a few other things here. Alright, so then you can go and install, let's see, let's go to and then extensions. I want Privacy Badger. Select Privacy Badger here and say add to Firefox. And that's that. So yeah, we're up and running. Now, something that you can do additionally to this is do a search for 7 things to do after installing Arch. Yeah, 7 essential things to do after installing Arch. So this will just help you to install codecs and so forth. So, well, update your system, but we did that a little while ago. We did all this Xorg stuff. Yeah, that's how to install the different desktop environments. Okay, and install the LTS kernel, which is nice. Yart, the GUI package manager, PAMAC, you can install that. So you've got a GUI package manager. And here's your codecs, important you might want. And then productivity software. So we've already installed Firefox, but you can do LibreOffice, Thunderbird, etc. Your unzipping utilities you can install here. And yeah, customizing the looks and so forth, Conky and so forth. That path is, that URL is that. Okay, but that's it. So we've got, we've done an Arch install from scratch, and we've also put on a nice desktop environment, and everything is good. It's usable. Great guys, that's it. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.